Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first webinar in our series, The Science of Reading is for Everyone. My name is Laura Almazara, and I'm a marketing manager here at Amplify. Wanted to give you a couple notes before we get started. Today's webinar is going to be recorded, and everyone who registered for the webinar, including all of those of you who are here today, will get an email tomorrow with the recording link, and everyone here today will get a certificate of attendance. We have a live captioner with us today, so if you want access to the captions, you can click the live transcript button in the bottom tray. And throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, please pop them in the QA and we'll try to get to them at the end. We welcome any comments in the chat. And for now, please tell us where you're joining from today and what your role in education is. Oh, we have someone from Scottsdale. I am in Tempe, Arizona. Hi, neighbor. There's some literacy coaches, all kinds of teachers, biliteracy specialists. Wonderful. Thank you, all of you, so much for joining us today. We have a really exciting webinar, and we hope you enjoy yourself. We just wanted to do a quick reminder too. This is just the first webinar in our series. We have many more to go. The series runs through to April 7th. So if you haven't already signed up for more webinars, please do. You can reach them at amplify.com/SOR-everyone. Later this week, we'll be talking about centering multiple perspectives in knowledge building. And in future webinars, we'll discuss dyslexia, middle schoolers, and preschoolers, among many other topics. And next week, we have Natalie Wexler joining us to discuss the latest on the knowledge gap. Again, to find out about other webinars in the series and to register, just visit amplify.com/SOR-everyone. And today we have Alestra Flores Menéndez with us. She's going to be explaining how the science of reading can support dual language learners and how Amplify's new dual language suite honors and celebrates biliteracy to help our nation's nearly 4 million Spanish-speaking students develop both Spanish and English literacy skills. Alestra Flores Menéndez is from San Francisco, California, where she first worked as a Spanish dual immersion teacher. Over the past 2 decades, Alestra has worked with multilingual students and teachers in the US, Mexico, and Brazil to support biliteracy. Alestra has collaborated on projects designed for multilingual students with Stanford's SAIL project and UC Berkeley's Lawrence Hall of Science. Alestra teaches college English with the University of California, Berkeley's Equal Opportunity and Advancement Program, and at Mount Tamalpais, sorry if I mispronounced that, college at San Quentin Prison. Alestra firmly believes that literacy development is a lifelong endeavor and the most impactful way to change lives. So let's get started. Welcome, Alestra.
Thanks so much, Laura. And it is so wonderful to see the representation we have from not only just around the country, but I've seen Germany is here with us today. And I am so excited to be sharing with you how the science of reading can support dual language learners. So thank you everyone for coming. I wanted to start just by sharing what we've learned about how our demographics have changed in the nation. As of 2020, the US Department of Education found that 1 in 10 students in the US is actually multilingual, which means that these students speak 2 or more languages. And we all know that this is an asset that they bring to our schools. Of those students, 3/4 of them, or 7.6% of our student population, speak Spanish as their first language. That means there are 3.8 million Spanish-speaking students attending US schools. And that brings us to our topic of discussion today. How can the science of reading support dual language learners to become proficient readers and biliterate in Spanish and in English? So before we begin, I'd love to hear from you. You can drop your ideas in the chat. And I know many of you have been working towards this goal for your students. So I'd love to hear your ideas to establish our North Star for today. how would you describe a student who is biliterate in both Spanish and English? And I'm seeing double smart, powerful, confident, geniuses, awesome students, twice exceptional, leaders, brilliant. And so we are really starting off our day today understanding that this is an asset. And I have to say, I am so happy. I feel like I am here with my people. So thank you for all of this wonderful positivity, bilingue and proud, blessed, competent in 2 cultures. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take this positive vibe forward and share with you what the research has told us. Here, what you see is the simple view of reading. And many of you had brought up ideas about, if students are bilingual and biliterate, they know how to read, write, think, listen, and use academic vocabulary in discussions, having proficiency in both of those languages, embracing that biculturalism I'm reading, that versatility. And what we know from extensive research represented here from the simple view of reading is that for students to become skilled readers in both English and in Spanish, it requires both language comprehension and word recognition. Here at Amplify, we build everything on the science of reading. And so today I'm going to share with you about how our products we build can support your dual language learners on their biliteracy journey. What you see here is Amplify's complete dual language literacy system. Our top-rated English literacy system is now available in Spanish. I am so excited to share. And with this system, teachers in English and in Spanish assess their students using reliable data to provide to assess their students and then provide high-quality core instruction, which is then reinforced by personalized instruction and skill practice. So we're going to talk about mCLASS Lectura, which is our assessment system that provides universal and dyslexia screening. This allows teachers to have predictive data on the most critical literacy skills in Spanish. So allow me to share with you mCLASS Lectura. I'd like to start with our research base. Here are our own experts. Lillian Duran is from the University of Oregon, and her team have been working diligently to share with us the best in-class assessment. We know, and our researchers also truly believe, that multilingual students bring many assets. And as many of you shared, they are bringing multilingualism. They're bringing foundations for their English development and their heritage and culture. And we know all of these are assets. But what Lillian Duran and her team have found is that the way in which we are assessing students aren't allowing us to see those assets that students are bringing. When Spanish-speaking students are assessed solely in English, as you see in this 2019 study by the University of Oregon researchers, as many as 63% of students who were entering kindergarten were identified as needing Tier 2 and Tier 3 reading support. Now, these same native Spanish-speaking students, when they were allowed to be assessed in the language that they had grown up in, the language that they're loved in, what we have found is that 21% of the students actually needed that type of intervention. And so what this is telling us is that students are being misclassified on a gross scale. And teachers know this, and teachers have been demanding the right assessment for some time. Teachers want to know that their assessment for their Spanish-speaking students are on level with the English assessments that they're able to provide. They want parity. Another thing teachers want is that there is cultural responsiveness. So the words and the passages of the assessment really need to reflect the students and the backgrounds that they come from. Additionally, teachers want these assessments to be backed by research. They want them to be credible, and from credible sources like the researchers we shared with you from the University of Oregon and beyond. And finally, teachers finally want to see side by side how are these assets my students are bringing into the classroom really going to support them? How can I leverage these to give a unified picture of my students' biliteracy skills? So we developed mCLASS Lectura. mCLASS Lectura has been validated for benchmark progress monitoring and dyslexia screening in Espanol, in Spanish, and it has complete parity with our English assessment. Many of you may be familiar with mCLASS DIBELS 8. mCLASS Lectura spans foundational skills from kindergarten through grade 6, and it drives instructional decisions for the teacher. Now, when mCLASS Lectura is paired with DIBELS 8 for English skill assessment, we know that we can leverage and support cross-linguistic transfer to support our students to become biliterate. Now, I'm going to show you just a preview of our reporting that mCLASS Lectura can provide for you and your students. For Gabriel, who we see here, this is his biliteracy journey. He has been assessed on these foundational skills in English, and he's also been assessed on these same foundational skills with the Spanish assessment in mCLASS Lectura. And here what you can see is his dual language report. This report will provide instructional guidance for the teacher, will provide information about the assets that Gabriel brings, his areas of need, and then provide activities for the teacher so that she or he can support Gabriel. I'll tell you a little bit about the way the assessment is administered. If you are not familiar with mCLASS DIBELS 8, what you'll see here is a teacher assessing her student. Here you see a student, Lisette, sitting across from her teacher, and her teacher is giving her a 1-minute measure on foundational reading skills. For 1 minute, the teacher is recording on a tablet or device what skills Lisette is producing. Now, this is very gentle on Lisette because she comes to see her teacher maybe for 5 minutes while her teacher is gathering some very useful data that she trusts, because her teacher is sitting across from Lisette and actually observing her produce the skills. Now, when we are talking about mCLASS Lectura, I want to make some clarifications for those of you familiar with mCLASS DIBELS 8. Some of the assessment measures are focused on how literacy develops in Spanish. And so one of the measures for mCLASS Lectura will be what we call our K-inicio measures. And these will really capture students at the very earliest levels of their developmental progress. Sometimes students might be given a prompt to point to an image to really capture what it is that they know. Another clarification I'd like to make is that for phonological awareness, as many of you on the call know, sometimes it's actually the syllable that is the smallest linguistic unit for Spanish-speaking students. And so you're going to see in the phonological awareness components of this assessment that their students are actually going to be working both at the syllable level as well as at the phoneme level. And finally, for decoding, we know that Spanish is a transparent language, and so decoding for students happens usually at a more rapid rate than with a more opaque language like the English language. And so you're going to see indications of this also in mCLASS Lectura. So let me show you the trajectory here. What we see is this developmental continuum that mCLASS Lectura aligns with. And these are going to look very familiar to those of you who use mCLASS DIBELS 8. So for kindergarten, what you will see is letter naming, phonological awareness, and alphabetic principle. And then in grade 1, we will begin to add on fluency and comprehension. And then in grade 2, this continues without letter naming at this point. And in grade 3, we continue with alphabetic principle, fluency, and comprehension. And for grades 4 to 6, you'll see that we continue really measuring those skills of fluency and comprehension. Now, we know that for many districts, there are additional measures really for student screening. And so we do have additional assessments available to really broaden the skills that are assessed and provide you with the data that you need. This is the way Lectura is administered. And I'm going to provide you with the demonstration so you can see what this looks like. But just so that you know what's happening in the demo I'm about to show you, the teacher has a device they're holding in their hand. If this were a phonological awareness assessment, for example, the student might not have anything in front of them, but really be listening to the teacher's prompts. If a student is actually doing word reading or syllable reading, or actually reading a piece of printed text, the student would have that in front of them. So let me show you a quick demonstration.
Hola Sonia, ¿cómo estás hoy?
Bien.
Voy a decir una palabra. Después de que la diga, tú me dices todos los sonidos que escuchas en la palabra. Por ejemplo, si digo la palabra para, tú debes decir para. Si yo digo la palabra piso, tú debes decir piso. Intentamos hacer una. Dime los sonidos en la palabra metal. Dime todos los sonidos que escuches.
Metal.
Muy bien. Los sonidos en la palabra metal son metal. Aquí está tu primera palabra. Haga.
Haga.
Húmedo.
Húmedo.
Alta.
Alta.
Afilado.
Afilado.
Equipo.
Equipo.
Sentido.
So as you can see in this assessment, the teacher is able to record what it is her student is producing in terms of the skills, to mark errors with just a tap, and also if the student is actually segmenting and then blending the syllables, the teacher can also indicate that. Now, I'd like to show you that this can be a really helpful assessment for a variety of students with biliterate profiles. As I know, many of you are joining with diverse students in your classrooms or in your districts. We may have native Spanish speakers, we may have native English speakers learning Spanish, and this report can provide helpful information for both of those profiles. So let me demonstrate for you what this would look like. Here, what you see is our benchmark for the middle of the year, where this teacher has done these 1-minute measures with their entire class and received these composite scores. Notice at a glance that all of these skills have a composite score, and the teacher can see which of their students have well below or have performed below the benchmark. They can also see it's about 35% of the students that we will want to then provide some support for. The teacher can see who's at benchmark, who's above benchmark, just at a glance. And scrolling down, the teacher can also see for individual students, such as Sonia, how the students performed on a particular assessment. If the teacher wanted to go into the actual assessment, for example, here with Gabriel, the teacher can see how that student performed on this fluidez de la segmentación de sílabas, or syllable segmentation fluency. The teacher can see that as Gabriel started to be presented with multisyllabic words, he started to struggle a bit with segmenting those syllables. Now, the teacher can also come up here and close this report and go to the instruction tab and select Gabriel and scroll to see what was Gabriel's patterns. Where was Gabriel having difficulty with respect to particular sounds? As the teacher scrolls down, the teacher can also see the activities that would be very beneficial to support Gabriel to really build his syllable segmentation fluency. I'm going to come here now to this group tab And for those of you who use mCLASS 88, you'll be aware that, you can also, as a teacher, have your students grouped so that those students who need similar support can work together in small groups with a teacher or maybe a support staff who comes in to provide that support. Here I see that Gabriel has been paired with Peter Baker. Both of these boys are working on syllables and words. I'm going to go ahead and click on See Activities so that I can see more information about how these boys need to work on blending syllables into words when they're reading. Here I have a little background about this particular skill, as well as some of the prerequisite skills for students to master this. And as I scroll down here, what I see is some of the difficulty that these students in this group are having and the activities that I can then use as a teacher to form a small group. Or if I have any push-in or pull-out support to provide those resources to the adult working with these students. I'm going to come back up here now because what I'd like to show you is that another important component is really informing the families and caretakers of these students, how they're performing in school, so that they can also provide some reinforcement at home. So for example, if I had families come in and did conferencing, this would be a really nice middle of the year data to share with my families and caretakers. It has a description of what this particular skill is and some examples of what that might look like. But if I scroll down here, what I can see is for Gabriel and Gabriel's family and support system, there's particular activities pointed out that can really support him at home. As a family, we can go to this Home Connect resource and gather more activities so that we can continue to support Gabriel in a fun and engaging way at home with that support. I'm going to go back now because I want to show you one last component of this report, and that is the dual language report I gave you a preview of. If I come to the dual language report, and again, talking about biliteracy and how we support these students to be, those amazing biliterate students who are so flexible in moving between their different cultures and languages, we have this report that can share for Gabriel. For instance, he's developing in English, but I can also see that in Spanish, he's on track. He's coming in with some strong skills, and I, as a teacher, want to be able to leverage those. If I scroll down below this, what I can see is for particular skills such as phonological awareness, how Gabriel is doing in both English and Spanish, as well as some scaffolds I can provide to Gabriel, and where I might leverage this cross-linguistic transfer. So for Gabriel, he may need additional support because of his strong support in phonological awareness, because of his strong phonological awareness skills. That can really, his instruction can build on the sounds that are similar across both languages and then highlight those sounds in English that are different. Whereas Alyssa, a native English speaker who is learning Spanish in her dual language program, she had higher phonological awareness skills in English than she did in Spanish, as well as decoding. So during her Spanish literacy instruction, again, focusing on those sounds that are similar would be wonderful, but also she needs some support to focus on those letter sound correspondences that are unique to Spanish, and then practice this at the syllable and the phoneme level. So that is just a very quick preview of our Lectura, and I'm sure, if I just want to mention, if you have any questions about this report, you can go ahead and put them in the chat or in the Q&A. But what I really would like to emphasize here is whatever the student is coming in with into a dual language program, we want to leverage those native language skills. Teachers want to know what are the skills that students are coming into the school with, what are the skills that students have that we can then leverage to the second language. So mCLASS Lectura when paired with DIBELS 8, can really provide us with that asset-based understanding of a child's biliteracy skills, and then support us with instruction for cross-linguistic transfer. Now, we know that there are lots of models out there. You may see the model that you're using in your school or your district here, but for any of these instructional models, we know that those native language assets can support cross-linguistic transfer. We also know that to build strong foundational skills requires core instruction that is high quality. And so I'd like to now shift over to share with you our Amplify Caminos program, which is a Spanish language arts curriculum. Amplify Caminos has been developed by this wonderful partnership with Amplify and these nationally recognized experts that are representative of the Latin American and Hispanic diaspora here in the US. These researchers have conducted focus groups with classroom teachers as well as specialists, special education teachers, and administrators. And what they have done is build everything in Caminos on the science of reading. This program has complete parity with our English language arts program, CKLA, or the Core Knowledge Language Arts program that many of you may be familiar with. And like CKLA, Amplify Caminos is built on the science of reading. And from the science of reading, we know that for students to have strong background knowledge and language comprehension is a key part of becoming a skilled reader. And so we have developed Amplify Caminos Conocimiento to build that background knowledge. And we know that that's only part of the equation, that we really need to build students' foundational skills in word recognition. So we have developed Amplify Caminos Lectoescritura. And together these form a comprehensive Spanish language arts program that is called Amplify Caminos. And I'm happy to share this with you today. So we're going to start with the Caminos Conocimiento. For those of you who use CKLA, this will remind you of your knowledge strand. But I want to share a few things that are unique to Caminos. And one of them is that we have authentic literature written by authors and poets across the Spanish-speaking world. What's nice about this is that students who are coming into our Camino classrooms can see themselves reflected in the works that they are reading, but they can also have windows into other cultures and other communities that are also part of the Spanish-speaking world and beyond. A few key vocabulary words, as we know, is really important when we're working with multilingual students. I'd like to present you with this idea of original text. Oftentimes we hear the term authentic text, and we do have authentic literature. When I say original text, what I mean to be specific about is that the text in CKLA and the text in Caminos may be part of the same domain, but we have several text examples, nursery rhymes, fables, personal narratives, and poetry that were composed by Spanish-speaking authors in the Spanish language. So I'm going to call those original texts, and you're going to see these original texts. For example, nursery rhymes that come from Colombia, fables that come from Mexico. You're going to see contemporary fiction from Puerto Rico, or poetry from Cuba. So while students in Amplify CKLA may be reading, for example, the poetry of Walt Whitman, students in Amplify Caminos might be reading the poetry of Pablo Neruda. Another word I'd like to share with you is trans-adapted. So while students may be working in the same domain, we know that Spanish and English are significantly different languages. And so some of the content, while it has been translated, we needed to also make adaptations. And I'll explain a little bit about that. If you are an Amplify CKLA student and studying plants in kindergarten, or you're an Amplify Caminos student studying plantas in Caminos, you are going to have some nuances specific to the language of instruction. For our trans adaptation, I'd like to point out morfología. So morfología, or morphology in English, working on word parts is going to be very unique to the Spanish language. We also have ortografía. So students who are in Caminos are going to have spelling patterns specific to the Spanish language as part of their knowledge strand or Caminos Conocimiento. And then gramática is going to be different. The grammar lessons in Amplify Caminos are going to be specific to the syntax and grammar of the Spanish language. And then there's one other key distinguisher, vocabulario. So as you can see here, I have a side-by-side view of Amplify CKLA vocabulary in the teacher's guide and Amplify Caminos vocabulary in the teacher guide. But notice that there are 3 additional vocabulary words in Spanish. And this is because when we are talking about academic language, oftentimes we're going to have additional vocabulary words in one language or the other. We want to make sure that we are placing close attention to the language demands of the text that students are reading and providing that explicit instruction around vocabulary. As you would imagine, Amplify CKLA has a very robust formative and summative assessment system, and you will also find this in Caminos Conocimiento. So teachers will have the opportunity to provide daily checks for understanding, as well as a daily formative assessment in Amplify Caminos. And the content and mid-unit assessments as well will be there, as will the placement benchmark assessments at the beginning, middle, and end of the year. And for every Amplify Camino Conocimiento unit, there will be a unit assessment at the middle and end of that unit. Another thing that you may have loved about using CKLA, for those of you CKLA users, is that we do have language supports. So what you see here is CKLA and Caminos. Now, for English learners in CKLA, we have tiered supports. So if students are earlier in their trajectory of English proficiency, they have more robust supports. Well, the same is true for Spanish learners in Amplify Caminos. So for students who are needing some additional scaffolds because they're emerging or nivel emergente, they might have different activities than a student who is at the nivel avanzado or in a more advanced level of their Spanish language acquisition. And so you will see these tiered supports for language learners in both programs. Additionally, we want families, of course, to be part of the learning process. And so if you have students in Amplify Caminos who need a letter in English sent home to their families or a letter in Spanish sent home to their families, you would have those 2 options as well. So I'm going to shift gears now. We've been talking about how we can build knowledge through Amplify Caminos Conocimiento, but I'm very happy to share with you that we also have an explicit and systematic program to build those foundational skills en español, in Spanish, and this is Caminos Lectoescritura. So in Caminos Lectoescritura, I'd like to present you with one more vocabulary word, and this is transparent language. For those of you who teach simultaneously English and Spanish, you know that English is a much more opaque language. For Spanish, when we talk about it being a transparent language, it's because we have a pretty much one-to-one correspondent to sound spellings in the Spanish language. Again, this is an approximate one-to-one because we know there are variances, but this really is something to consider when in the English language we have 150 different sound spelling combinations, and it's much more opaque. It still has the same requirements, though. To develop foundational skills in Spanish, we need to have a systematic scope and sequence, and the science of reading tells us this. Students need to be able to blend and segment at the syllable as well as phoneme level, and they need practice with dictation and reading connected texts, as well as applying their skills to writing. And so in Amplify Caminos Lectoescritura, we provide this explicit and systematic instruction of sounds. Here what you see is a lesson where the teacher is really supporting students in their phonological awareness to be discriminating sounds, to be producing and articulating sounds before the teacher will teach students how the sound is spelled, provide that graphing for the sound, and teach students how to actually write this sound, how to encode with this sound, and how to practice their handwriting. And then, of course, to apply this to deliberately reading 100% decodable texts. And so these connected texts, one that you see here, the students have been introduced to all of the sounds that would be presented to them in this particular text. And so this is similar to those of you who use CKLA skills, and we're happy to share that we have the same parity for Amplify Caminos Lectoescritura to support foundational skill building in our early learners. So I'd like to go ahead and share with everyone here on the call all of the ways in which Amplify supports biliteracy. We talked earlier about Amplify mCLASS DIBELS 8 paired with mCLASS Lectura that is validated for benchmark progress monitoring and dyslexia screening. We know that those strong core is so key for our students to become biliterate. And so we have Amplify Caminos and Amplify CKLA that can provide English language arts instruction and Spanish language arts instruction that have complete parity. And we also have in development, very happy to share with you today, Amplify Reading that provides that personalized learning so students can continue to reinforce those skills and extend their learning. So we talked about all of the different ways in which you folks had shared how we would describe a student who's biliterate in both Spanish and English. And we at Amplify are happy to support you on this journey to support your student. I'd like to share the words of one of our amplifiers here, who is a designer and supported me to get this presentation ready for you. Gerardo Torres Davila says, biliterate students bring two cultures together. And when they do this, they can be chameleons. They can fit into multiple environments. And I heard lots about that flexibility from your comments in the chat. We know that this broad cultural knowledge really helps all of our students, whether they're native Spanish speakers learning English or native English speakers learning Spanish, or bilingual students really developing their biliteracy in both languages simultaneously. They all get a larger worldview. And this is our goal. So I'd like to invite you to continue this conversation to learn more about how Amplify is supporting teachers with dual language. So please come to our mega symposium. You can take out your calendar and save the date. On May 19th, we are going to have an all-day virtual event. We are going to have experts from the field coming and joining us and talking about biliteracy through assessment, through core instruction and personalized learning. And we're also going to provide additional demos. So if you have more questions about mCLASS Lectura or Caminos, please come and join us and attend those demos. This is for anyone who uses any of our Amplify products in English and Spanish, or who would like to learn more and become part of our partnership. And there will be, of course, swag and prizes. So I welcome you to join us. And I'd love to take any preguntas, questions at this point in time. I know Laura's gonna help me. I see that we've got some questions there.
Yes, we sure do. Thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you everyone for your wonderful questions that have been coming through the past 40 minutes. So to start, Alestra, can you tell us, are Caminos and Lectura just for native Spanish speakers?
No. So Lectura is actually when paired with DIBELS 8, you can do assessment for students who are English speaking. And if you have Spanish learners, you can also monitor students' progress on foundational skills in Spanish. So if students are not native Spanish speakers, but learning the language of Spanish, mCLASS Lectura would be a wonderful tool for your classroom to provide that assessment data that can then guide your instruction and even support you with grouping your students. For Caminos, if that was another question, is native Spanish speakers, currently there are several teachers who are using Caminos with predominantly English speaking students. And so we know that across the nation, there are lots of different dual language models, but you don't have to be a native Spanish speaker. Amplify Caminos is built from the ground up to really support students to build their foundational skills and also bolster their background knowledge in the Spanish language, whether they're native speakers or not.
Wonderful, thank you. The next two questions I can take. What grades does Amplify Caminos serve and what grades does mCLASS Lectura serve? So Amplify Caminos is for students in grades K to 5 and mCLASS Lectura is for students in grades K to 6. The next question we'll ask, Alestra, can you tell us, are the resources available in Spanish in Amplify Caminos the same as the resources available in Amplify CKLA?
Yes, and this is very intentional by design. So for example, in a CKLA classroom, you will have a teacher guide and some beautiful picture cards, image cards. Students will have activity books. Students will have student readers. If we're talking about Caminos Conocimiento, you would see those same exact resources. So the intention is that for teachers to have absolute parity. Some of the teachers I've been speaking with share with me, well, we have an A-B day and one teacher may teach English on the A day and Spanish on the B day. What's really nice about this is by having those same resources and pairing your scope and sequence, you can really make that shift a lot more easily than the way that I used to do it in my classroom, where I really had to kind of figure out how I was going to adapt my English to my Spanish or vice versa. So all of the same resources and materials you would have in CKLA, you will also have in Amplify Caminos.
Wonderful, thank you for that. Next, can you tell us, is mCLASS Lectura based on the science of reading?
Is mCLASS Lectura based on the science of reading? Was that the question?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, if you, and I can come back here from the science of reading, I'll come back to this image. I know that these are in Spanish, but what you will see is from the science of reading, what we know is that these early skills are predictive of a student's reading ability. And so these are built on the science of reading and they are assessed not only in Spanish, but these also mirror the same foundational skills that are measured in our mCLASS DIBELS 8 assessment.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Next question. A few people have asked this. Does the teacher need to be Spanish speaking in order to give the mCLASS Lectura assessment? And another person asked quite similarly, I speak English only. How would I use the system and assess the bilingual student myself?
So I think what is really good news is that the English only teacher, so if you only speak English, you can utilize this data. To administer the assessment is another story. So what we see usually is if there is an English teacher in let's say a transitional bilingual program, there will be specialists who can support with providing the Spanish assessment in mCLASS Lectura. And the qualifications, if you will, for providing this assessment is, to understand the science of reading, but we do have training modules. We have extensive professional development to really support your staff to be able to administer this assessment. So yes, Spanish is a requirement to give the Lectura assessment to Spanish speaking students or Spanish learning students. And then also, of course, the comfort with assessing children and working in a school environment.
Thank you. Can you clarify what form of Spanish is used? Is it Castellano, Latino, another dialect?
So both of the programs, Lectura as well as Caminos, have a broad range of Spanish speakers. What is beautiful is that in the assessment measures, they have taken, for example, different regional representations of a particular word. As we know in Spanish, from different parts of the Spanish-speaking world, there may be a different way to express a particular thing. I think there's like 8 ways that you can say the word pig, for example. So those would all be accepted as correct responses if a student provided, let's say, a regional representation of that word versus another child from a different region. And again, this research has been going on for 3 years and will continue. And so we will continue to refine those measures. In Caminos, what I found to be really helpful, for example, if there were a nursery rhyme a teacher is reading and there's a word that is specific to a particular region. For example, we use a Colombian nursery rhyme called Que llueva. And in that nursery rhyme, there's a vocabulary word called chaparrón, which is like a downpour. Some people might not be familiar with the Colombian term chaparrón. And so in the teacher guide, it provides an explanation that is not only supportive of the teacher, but also for the students to really be able to express different ways of expressing similar ideas with respect to different regions of the Spanish-speaking world.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me see. We have quite a few questions coming in. Let me see what else we have here. Okay, can you talk about, someone asked if mCLASS Lectura is just an assessment or if there's instructional materials or a curriculum for instruction. Can you give a little bit more detail about that?
Yes, so it is assessment and instruction. So if you were able to see here sort of the assessment measure, so the teacher is collecting this data and getting it in a report, and that report can be individualized to the student. But what it also provides is instruction. So I'm going to go ahead and show you here. If I go to this instruction tab, you can see individual instruction for students based on the skills that they need support with. If you scroll down, these are different activities. For example, this particular student is going to get some reinforcement, understanding some digraphs specific to Spanish, such as ch or che, in Spanish, the CH or the double L, ella. So this student is going to be working with those specific skills based on the data. That's the instruction that is recommended. Another thing that we can do in terms of instruction is group our students by, students who need similar support. So when a teacher is maybe doing, maybe there's some MTSS time or some response to intervention time, this is where the teacher can get those activities and provide them to this small group of students. Or maybe there's push in or pull out support, and these activities can be utilized then. Thank you for that question.
Wonderful, thank you. We'll just do another 1 or 2 here. Can you talk about if class lecture can be used as a standalone assessment?
If Lectura can be used as a standalone assessment, meaning not paired with mCLASS DIBELS 8, I'm assuming, and the answer is yes. If you would like to use mCLASS Lectura solely as a Spanish language assessment, it can be a standalone. Likewise, if you were a school using mCLASS DIBELS 8, that can also be a standalone. But what we're excited about is now we also have parity, and you can use these in tandem to support biliteracy.
Great, thank you. We'll do 1 more. Can you tell us, is mCLASS Lectura validated to screen for dyslexia?
Yes, it is validated to screen for dyslexia using mCLASS DIBELS 8 in English and using mCLASS Lectura in Spanish. And there are additional assessment items. It really depends on what the screening measures are required by your state and your district. And so you will find that there are additional assessment measures.
Thank you so much. We'll cap it there. I know we have many more questions coming in. Some of them will hopefully be answered in the email we send out tomorrow with some additional resources. So I just want to take a moment to thank you so much, Alestra, for the wonderful information you've shared with us. Again, I'll take another opportunity to share about the Dual Language Symposium we have in May. Save the date. It'll be a wonderful event with lots of amazing speakers, and we'll have some more information about that in the coming weeks. And again, I'd like to take a moment to remind you that we still have many more webinars left in this series. This is the first of 12 we have, and this continues for the next 2 months. So if you're interested, please go to amplify.com/SOR-everyone. There you'll find details about all of the remaining webinars in the series, as well as opportunities to sign up for them. And if you end up missing any, if they occur before you have the chance to sign up for them, you'll also be able to find links to the recordings for those there. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so sorry we weren't able to get to all of your questions, and we really appreciate your time, especially yours, Alestra. This is a wonderful presentation. So thank you everyone very much, and please make sure to join us next week too, where we'll talk more about dual language with Dr. Lillian Duran. We have that webinar occurring twice next week if you can't make one of the times, and we really look forward to seeing you at other webinars in the series. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.